Hello, my favorite listener. I see you found yourself back into the dark of the woods. This is episode 5, the final episode of the Hermit of the Pines. Let's see if these crazy Ferris kids can get out of this alive. Into the Dark of the Woods runs on Fridays, and as we finish this arc, I will tell you we're going to roll right into another one starting next Friday. I'm not going to tell you exactly what that is yet, but it's gonna happen because it's already recorded and ready to go. That's just how we roll here. As always, this is the product of Rust Belt Studio, and we have the two other shows, Mikey and the Garden Arch and The Engine of War. If you hadn't had a chance to yet, we encourage you to check those out. They're on Tuesdays, wherever you got this podcast. These listens, likes, shares, they are all going a really long way. I can't tell you how great it is to watch the number move up. I can't tell you how exciting it is to be trying out this venture. This is something very new for me, and I really am excited to see what already success has happened and what could possibly happen in the future. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, settle in. The show is about to start. Morning didn't so much arrive as unseal. The sky had been scrubbed pale by the storm, the clouds thinned to gauze, the kind of light that makes snow look like it's lit from inside. The woods were as quiet as a held breath, no wind, no bird song, just the creak of trees adjusting to their new weight. They stepped out of the ruined shelter one by one. Their footprints from the night before were gone. Even the ragged tracks of their scramble into this place had been smoothed over, as if the storm had been a careful editor redlining anything that didn't fit the scene. Jonah paused at the threshold. He'd slept, technically. His eyes had closed and hours had passed. But the sleep had been thin and crowded, full of images pinned just beyond memory. He rubbed at his neck while the others shrugged into packs. His skin felt tighter there, as if he'd slept with a collar buttoned wrong. "You good?" Casey asked, tightening the strap across his chest. Jonah nodded. "Yeah, just cold." Riley looked him a beat longer. There was a new pallor to him, not the red-cheeked frost of the others, but a kind of wintering from the inside. She almost said it. She didn't. Instead, she flicked her recorder on and logged it the way she logged everything else. Day 4, post-storm. Cabin intact, departing, headed for the car and Trout Lake. Group is tired. They stepped into the stillness. The world had been wiped clean and laid flat, a blank page you could ruin with one sentence. For a while there were no tracks but their own, but then Riley saw them, faint depressions at the end of a thicket where the light slanted in. Not crisp, not fresh, but there, a long-toed print softened by wool. Another, almost dragging. "Here," she said, and the three of them stood in a small kingdom of trees that looked down at sign that meant someone else had woken earlier and chosen to move away from them. Jonah crouched and held his hand over one of the prints, not touching it. The shape was still irregular, the heel more suggestion than detail, the 4 foot long where a human foot would have ended. The wool had blurred the edges, and a tracker would have had to make a story out of these, and he would have been unhappy with the draft. "Leaving," Jonah said, and surprised himself by how the word sounded. He coughed into his scarf and wrote it down. Leaving. Or fading. The trio walked. The last mile was stillness and sun on crusted snow. They only sank every 5th step, and that was a blessing in and of itself. Then the trees thinned and gave them back the ideas for directions. Far off to the west, past the jack pines, a narrow line marked a plowed county road. Riley opened the GPS, and they cut their path as much of a beeline as they could straight to their car. They didn't see him at first. They felt him. what the body does when it knows another body is watching, the hair noticing its job. Casey lifted the camera and held it low, not quite filming, like a handshake kept in the pocket. Riley spotted him. "There," she said without pointing, her chin a slight tilt. Across a white swale at the edge of a strand of spruce, a figure moved. The patchwork coat stood out in the light, bare head, socks visible above whatever wrapping passed for boots. He wasn't trying to hide. He wasn't trying to do anything but move. His shoulders were hunched against the brightness. Each breath came visible and hard. He paused halfway across the open and stood with his weight tucked, a man who conserved everything he could. He raised his face without raising his chin, a look up from under the brow. It wasn't a plea or a warning. It was a taking of measure. Once again he looked at the trio and took attendance to make sure that they were in fact leaving. Casey lifted the camera an inch higher, but then let it down. The lens fogged and cleared as it still breathed along with him. Riley didn't speak. She let the recorder hum. Audio is what you bring home when images defeat you. Jonah rubbed that spot on his neck again, watching. He couldn't shake the sense that he had seen the man like this before, not across snow, but across some other distance you didn't walk. The dream came back as a sensation more than an image, breath hanging between two people, a mouth very carefully closed, a word not said. The hermit turned without hurry and slipped into the trees. Not a vanishing act, just a man walking out of a shot. The spruces swallowed him gratefully. The world didn't clap or sigh, it simply continued. They found the last trade on the edge of the road and just a few feet from their car, set on a stump. A wool hat, patched at the crown with a square of darker knit, darned at the rim where ears would have worn it thin. It had been folded once, then again with a care that made it difficult to breathe around. Inside the fold laid a rabbit pelt, stiff with cold, scraped clean. Casey held the hat in both hands and then set it back exactly as it had been. I don't think this is for us, he said, and no one argued. They stood a moment longer for reasons none of them had to explain, then shouldered their packs and trudged to the car. By midday, the woods began to live closer to the road. Snowmobiles would come through in a month to stitch black lines across the white, but for now it was all still potential and silence. They threw their packs into the trunk, climbed into their respective spots, and Casey started the car, and it was a dream. "You sure you're okay?" Riley said to Jonah low. I just didn't sleep, he said. Dreams. I don't remember. "You do look a little pale," Casey said, not unkindly. "Thanks, you look great," he said. He rubbed the spot at his neck again where warmth seemed reluctant to return. As the car pulled forward, they got onto the first plowed view of road, and it felt like a border crossing. They drove back the way that they had come, back to the bar in Trout Lake, and it looked exactly the way that they had left it. The Bud Light sign still buzzed the same tired blue. Inside, heat dogged their ankles and rose up their legs. The mounted pikes still looked down with their old glass eyes disapprovingly. This time there was more people. Snowplow drivers off shift, 2 men in blaze orange arguing in low voices about a trail gate. The bartender glanced up as if the woods had filed into the room. He nodded to the bar stools and immediately fetched them menus and warm drinks. "I didn't think you kids were going to come back." Casey set his camera on the bar stool next to him and ordered 3 bowls of chili. When the bartender brought them out, steam fogged his face. He grinned into it and ate heartily, his body forgiving him if he keep it warm and fed. Riley pulled her headphones down and scrolled through files with mittened hands, playing back little loops of wind and boots and snow and the hiss of the butane heaters in the cave. Jonah wrapped his hands on either side of his bowl, but he didn't lift the spoon. The steam felt good on his face. The smell turned over in his stomach like a boat uncertain of shore. "Not hungry?" Riley asked and then spooned up a mouthful. "Later," he said. I don't think my stomach can handle hot food right now." The bartender came closer, wiping at the bar in wide arcs. He squinted at Jonah in the way locals do, the quick, comprehensive inventory. "You look a little pale, kid," he said, and then grinned, trying to make the sentence more of a tease than a diagnosis. "Yeah, I probably do." The bartender tipped his chin as if conceding a point that had not been argued. He set a glass of water down. "There's plenty of salt in that chili. It'll help make you feel better." Casey finished his bowl ravenously and then reached for Riley's, and she slapped his hand without looking. He laughed like a man grateful to be reminded of rules. Outside, the light had changed direction and the window glass had gone from mirror to lens. Car tires his past sprang slush like applause. They didn't tell the room anything. The bartender waited, and they told the room what they felt like they needed to tell them. Snow heavy, a storm that cleaned the world, a cave for a night, the ruin of a cabin that still remembered how to hold at least enough heat for them to survive. They talked about the man who had led him to the cabin. They left out all the trades. They said the word hermit the way the bartender had said it, a noun that had outlived the person it was meant to describe. "So he is out there," the bartender said. "You're damn sure lucky of that. Maybe he's always been out there." It could have been reassurance or just the bar's version of weather. Jonah's spoon rested where he'd set it. He put his palm against his neck again, as if soothing a wrinkle invisible to the others. He felt present, but not entirely hinged in. The conversation moved around him the way water moves around a pier post, cleanly, as if it's built to do so. They paid, and the bartender slid a small box across the bar without comment. Inside were 2 flannel shirts, elbows patched with mismatched squares, and a wool cap with a hole carefully sewn shut. "If you're going back out," he said, but he left the sentence there because the look on their faces said that they weren't going out any time ever again. He pulled the boxes back, and they walked back out into the snow. They loaded back into the car, warmer, alive, and dog-tired. Riley fell asleep 5 miles away from the bar, leaning against the window. Casey drove with the radio low, tapping thumb to wheel, the road unwinding in 2 clean black lines beneath the snow's soft insistence. Behind them, at the edge of a county road the plow had been kind to, a man stood in the tree line. He had come quietly as he always did. He stood quietly as he always had. His coat took the color out of the day. His socks were damp where snow had climbed them, and he watched the car until it left the frame of his world and became a moving sound. He watched after that too, because watching was the thing that he had, and a grief is a kind of watching. When he turned back into the woods, the branches lifted and laid themselves behind him. The light, always generous with snow, went a little bluer toward evening. A crow shook a branch somewhere in the east, and snow fell in a billow like breath. Far off, under the skin of ice, the creek remembered how to talk. Jonah sat in the back of the car with his notebook open across his knees. The page he'd left blank before lunch had filled itself with lines he didn't remember writing, loops and scratches that could have been words if he squinted and were charitable. He turned the page and wrote home, then crossed it out, then wrote south, and left it alone. He reached into the side pocket of his pack for chapstick, and his fingers brushed fur. He frowned and lifted the flap. The rabbit pelt lay there, folded, slick with cold. He stared at it, then glanced up at the rear view. Casey caught his eyes and raised his brows. Jonah closed the flap, shook his head, and played it off as though nothing had happened. He rubbed that spot on his neck again. The skin there felt like all the rest of him did, functional, tired, a little left of true. He tipped his head back and watched Sky streak the way Sky does when you're moving away from something that doesn't measure distance the way you do. They crossed into the lower peninsula with the usual ritual, the bridge a span of iron and wind, the lake on either side a flat sheet of hammered metal. The car shook once, brief and impersonal, and then the road bent away from the water and into fields that kept their own counsel under snow. No one in the car said goodbye to where they'd come from. Jonah's eyes closed and he let the road rock him. The dreams came again like weather, arriving without request, leaving without apology. He did not remember them when he woke the next morning. He remembered the smell of wool. He remembered the hiss of a blue flame, and a voice with winter in it saying only what was necessary. They hid another patch of slush in case he corrected without thinking. The snow kept falling in the kind of flakes that learn your name. The day thinned and gave itself to the next thing. Somewhere north, a hat still sat on a stump, folded just so. Somewhere south, a rabbit pelt warmed inside the side pocket of a pack like a letter no one had sent. And in between, where the cedars crowd and the creek talks to itself and the wind changes its mind every hour, prints pressed into new snow and softened towards nothing, the way all stories do when the forest is finished with them. Hello again. Well, episode 5 thus concludes this arc of Hermit of the Pines. That's 2, for those of you keeping score at home, and I very much am. Bargain of the Field and Hermit of the Pines are both complete. I know I said this at the beginning, but just as a quick reminder, we are going to roll right into another arc starting next Friday. This will be the last one that we do before we take a little break. It won't be long, a couple weeks tops, but we gotta rest everything. It's the holidays. Things are crazy. I'm amazed that you're here. I'm amazed that you're finding time to listen to this. I very much appreciate you for doing it. Thank you for the listens, for the likes, and the shares. If you'd like to listen to more from Rust Belt Studio, and as a reminder, not that you probably didn't already figure out, but this is a Rust Belt Studio production. It was written and performed by Bryan Foster. Rust Belt Studio also brings you 2 other shows. If you haven't had a chance to check them out, we very much encourage you to do so. Mikey and the Garden Arch and the Engine of War, they are both put out every Tuesday opposite each other, so every 2 weeks. Not quite as often as Dark of the Woods, but then again, I gotta breathe. I'm just amazed at how well things have been going. I'm amazed at how excited I am for this. I, had this crazy idea on a random Wednesday back in August and said, you know what, we're going to make this happen. And here we are now, 2 full arcs done, 1 arc queued up and ready to go, and so many more written and being worked on right now that I'm very, very excited for the future, and I'm very, very excited that you're here to share that with me. So, like, listen, subscribe. We do very much appreciate that. Patreon link is in the notes below. If you'd like to join us, there are 2 $5 and $9 tiers. December will also have at least 1 exclusive. I'm really trying to work on more that will go up in volume as well, because we really want to make that $5 tier worthwhile, and I really want you to feel like you're getting your money's worth for at least signing up, even if it's just for 1 month, just to hear what's back there, and we're like, oh, that was great, cool. I'll try to get you there every month with something new and exciting and great, just like that stuff. In the meantime, come back next Friday for an all-new arc and an all-new story. Until next time, my favorite listener.